Hi there, my name is Leela Beckett, the Rabbi from another planet. I really should have learned that by now after a couple of years saying that. Please like, share, and subscribe. And welcome to the Video Vault. The Video Vault is where we open up the video vault, my personal video vault of the strange, the bizarre, the wonderful in cinema. And I have some people with me to enter the vault. Joining us tonight, we have Noel from the Tardis. Noel, how are you this evening? It'll go out at 7 o'clock on 5 o'clock on Friday. So how are you this afternoon, I should say?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty darn good, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I'm doing extra special good because we also have Mega Geek with us. How are you, Mega Geek?
I'm okay. I'm doing all right. I hope you guys are doing well.
Your avatar doesn't leave much to the imagination. I thought that was video. I didn't realize it was you. Then he did a move.
Yeah, it's me.
We have Dan Hadley from the Spacebook, the Type 40 podcast, and anywhere else you can find him. I'm sure I'll put it in the video.
Yes, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. I could have been lying about it the whole time, couldn't I?
No, you are the King of the Geeks. But listen, does Birmingham have much stiff competition for King of the Geeks?
Well, I'm getting some feedback. So as it turns out, yes, it is Naughty Dan. So yes, there could be some contenders to the crown.
We'll have them taken care of for you. Yeah, and finally, last but by no means least, we have Problem Being. How are you, something about Problem Being?
Hello. It's a pleasure to see you all.
Shalom. Go to bed.
Shalom.
Go to bed, okay?
What?
I told him to go to bed. He's being bold. Go to bed.
No. Stay up for another hour so we can talk about our movie tonight. Our movie tonight is, of course, the 1988, I would say classic, the bizarre, bonkers classic that should never have been made and is amazing that it ever got completed.
Yeah, I've got
it is, of course, Terry Gilliam's The Adventures of Baron Muchhausen. Let me pull up the pictures. There we go. 1 second. There we go.
It needs a fanfare, doesn't it, this bit? There we go.
So the one of the many stories about this movie is that there's this little part in it where they have a chorus of three women and they sing. One of them being Uma Thurman, who was 18 when she filmed this, or maybe
17, I think. Really? Yeah.
So, it came out when she was 18. You're right. They sing, "What shall become of the Baron? How will he escape his fate?" And every time the movie nearly got derailed, that's what Terry Gilliam would sing to himself. Fine. So let's just start with a little overview of what this is. This is I think, very, very ahead of its time, expansive, bizarre, bonkers, wonderful fantasy movie.
On steroids.
Sorry?
You have to say it's a fantasy movie on steroids.
On steroids, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think it would have been less jarring coming out in 2005, 2010. It was a good 20 years ahead of its time, I think. And it got completely buried by the company. Was it Columbia, I think, because there was a change in regime, and the new people came and just hated this movie with every fiber of their being, and they didn't really have a particularly good relationship with Terry Gilliam after Brazil, which that was a whole other story that maybe we'll get into. So let's start by heading through the plot of the movie. So it starts off. How does it start off? It's in the Age of Reason on a Wednesday, which is a gag they recycled from Life of Brian, but fine, it's good. I've actually seen people in the entertainment industry do that quite shamelessly. Like, movie saw last week with Gene Wilder. One of his favorite scenes ever was that bit in Young Frankenstein, if you've ever seen it, where he's like got a
favorite film.
It is, and moves it around a lot. So then he redid that completely when he directed a movie about 20, 30 years later called Haunted Honeymoon. It's not a very good movie, but again, they just cribbed that clean. So they cribbed that joke Wednesday. It'll say the Age of Reason, and there is a city-state under attack, and it's just it is incredibly detailed picture, like with just incredible cinematography and images you see on the screen. Every frame I was looking at for the first half hour, I said to myself, that looks incredible, and looks like they spent far too much money on it, right? So it looks like it's way too expensive to be on the screen. And there's a troupe of actors within the rubble. First we have this little girl. What's her name? Sally.
Sally,
yeah.
Sally, and she's creeping through the rubble. She sees a playbill on there telling about the show that's going to have it. It says whatever his name, Henry Salt and Son. So she's quite upset that it says son. She scratches out and writes daughter, and she goes, and they're performing a play of the Adventures of Baron Muchhausen, which is I guess is a German folk hero who did extraordinary things, right?
Yeah, against the Turk.
Against the Turk, yeah, and so and then the real Baron Muchhausen walks in and says, no, this is the real story about what happened. And before we get onto I think my favorite part of the movie, which is the next bit where we see how the siege happened, how the war happened with the Turks, which again is bonkers. Let's go around the panel. What does everybody think of the opening of this movie? Start with you, Noel. You're at the top of the tree right now.
Yeah, do you know what? I came into this movie not knowing what it was gonna be like, and I actually love the opening. I love when he storms in. I love the fact that they're taking the piss out of him, and everything seems to be going wrong.
Yes,
all the people underneath that are supposed to be moving all the waves and the boat and all. They're all just sitting around doing feck all, and your man is up doing his thing and he's falling. I actually like this movie, believe it or not. It was better. I'm sorry, this is controversial, but it's way better than Blazing Saddles.
You know what? I might agree with you on many levels. Actually, I do think it actually might be a better movie than Blazing Saddles.
I enjoyed this very much, so I have to be honest. I really did. It put a smile on my face. Yeah, it's out there. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's unrealistic, but it's just like every performance, even Eric Idle, brilliant, fantastic. I loved it. I have to be honest. I really did love this movie choice. I enjoyed it, and the opening is superb. I like the opening. Yeah.
I mean, listen. When I was watching the opening, I said this is going to be a mark because it's been a good 10, 15 years since I've seen it. I said this is going to be, absolutely. I mean, again, just judging on the opening. So, Ian, Mega Geek, what do you think of the first, 15, 20 minutes of this?
It was, I mean, it does what it says on the tin, right? I mean, it cost £45 million at the time. That was the biggest budget in Europe for a film, for a feature film, and it was shot in Italy, I believe. But
Spain. A lot of the reasons for the overrun in budget. I mean, other than doing stuff that's just ridiculously, every shot looks so expensive, right? Everything looks expensive.
It basically starts off with destruction, doesn't it? So it just carries on with things blowing up, and it's wonderfully shot. It looks wonderful. And then it goes into the play thing where everybody's bonkers, really. The whole place is falling apart. Yeah, they come to see this play, which made me smile. And you have the villain, what's his name? I can't remember the guy who played Jonathan Price. Immediately when you saw him, you knew he was the villain. So there you go. I mean, it was a good start as far as I was concerned. And I really enjoyed those first, 10 minutes?
So speaking of good starts, after the first week of filming, they had like these torrential winds and rain. The first day of filming, they got, I think, 35 seconds of footage in the camera. Second day, they got up to 45. By the time they finished the first week, they were 1 week behind.
It was a difficult film to shoot for them.
Yeah.
It was difficult because they kept, the budget was, I think it was 20 million, and then it went up, and then it ended up costing 45.
I was watching the documentary. It was okay. When they budgeted it, it came out as 35 million, right?
They
were given 25 million, and they had to scrape some money off, and they started trying to do stuff like that, and it never worked.
And Terry Gilliam's, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Then Terry Gilliam was said, quite honestly, so like, I am bad with money. As someone tells me that's what that costs, I believe them.
Right,
then he got accused of fraud and stuff, didn't he? Like,
I do like the visual effects in the film, though. I think the visual effects are fantastic.
Like the old school
physical models.
Fine.
Really
Dan,
good.
what's your thoughts on the opening few minutes, the opening 10, 15 minutes?
Just what Ian's just said just reminded me something very key to this film, when he talked about the physical effects and the model work. What I want to mention is that numerous times in this, and I don't get this very often, even with really old films, numerous times I found myself wondering what was a model and how big it actually was and what they built full size. It was extraordinary. Just like you, Rabbi, it's been about 15 years since I've seen this. And I saw it originally at the cinema when it came out on a lazy sort of Sunday afternoon, probably drinking Lilt or something like that. And I've seen it several times since, and I've always enjoyed it. And I'm a pretty big fan of Terry Gilliam's stuff. And recently I've gone back and watched a lot of it. So over the last 2 to 3 years, I've watched a lot of it again. And some of it has aged really, really well. Some of it hasn't. But this, I think this gets it as right as he's probably ever got it, in that middle ground. And from the beginning, I think the real reason why I think it works, it's something that I believe he tried with Time Bandits. It's more successful here. It's a family film. I was going to say children's film. It's a children's story, but a family film.
It's totally a family film.
And the way it sweeps you away from the start with this world, and you were right what you said about this, Rabbi, because I felt exactly the same. Every single corner of every single frame is just perfect. Everything's been considered, even the spaces where there's nothing particularly there. Yeah. You know that nothing has been considered to the tiniest degree, and yet it never bogs it down. It's from the get-go, it is very inviting and inclusive in the proper sense of the word, not the sense we get rammed down our throats now, but it just draws you in. It's the equivalent of when you're at school, at primary school, and the teacher would get you in and say, okay, class, come and sit down, and you'd all cross your legs and sit on the floor. The teacher would sit down on a chair and begin to tell you a story. It's intimate, it's intricate, and it's magical.
Magical, I think, is a pretty good description on the movie. Problem being, what are your thoughts?
It's funny Dan said that, because I remember it just evoked such a strong memory from me when I was at school, and my teacher one of our teachers, an old chap, I think it was near retirement, and he was very, very erudite and wore a 3-piece suit and all the rest of it, and he told us the story of Dorian Gray from start to finish, and we were just sat in silence, just listening to him tell this amazing story. It was fascinating. But I mean, to us, I think he left out some of the more graphic elements, but
self-edited. He's self-edited.
But he did it in such a way. It reminded me of my grandmother, because she used to read me stories when I was a kid, and like The Worst Witch and things like that. And it always took me away. My imagination just went absolutely wild, like Oscar Wilde, I suppose. He just went. And this film, I think, encapsulates that childhood imagination. It's absolutely filled top to toe perfectly with what seems to be a runaway childlike imagination, and it's so beautifully done. And that opening sort of 10 minutes really does, as Dan says, sort of rolls you into, sort of deals you this amazing hand, and you want to play. You get involved. You feel that you're interactive. You feel like you're part of the team. It's such an involving, inclusive, as you said, adventure. And I think it's so beautifully shot. It's painfully beautiful, especially when you first see the Angel of Death.
Oh my God, that's such
that scene is it's unbelievable. And then and then it goes into fire, and it's you know when Sally throws the candles.
Don't you think the problem being that if that had have all been done like now, we'd get that death in CGI.
Exactly.
The magic. I mean, the fact it is clearly a large puppet, you know, an animatronic, or I guess more of a puppet really on strings or poles or whatever. But it's. I imagine that's how a skeleton would move.
Yeah.
You know, and it's magic. It's pure magic. It's cinema magic at its best.
The practical effects in this are amazing. Actually,
they are absolutely
effects
beautiful.
And that reminds me of a horror movie that I love is The Exorcist, because they used a lot of practical effects in that. Now, okay, this movie hasn't aged badly, by the way. This movie is still beautiful. If they were to re-release this movie, it would actually, you wouldn't know that this was made in 1988. You wouldn't.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
I think a lot of the old rotoscope and early sort of green screen stuff was.
This movie was ahead of its time, so if that's the case, it would work today.
Yeah, well, I think the green screen effects. Apart that, there's like a couple where it towards the end where it's a bit overly,
ironically against blue sky.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But it works. I mean, it's done so well. Actually, I think they sort of mastered it at this point. I mean, there are a couple of scenes when it's really, really obvious, but there's most of the time it's done so well. And I think the cinematography in this is just superb. I can't fault it. From start to finish, you're so rushed along this wonderful story, these crazy characters, and you just trust this guy implicitly.
Listen, this is the best movie that I've watched in a few months. I really had a smile on my face watching this. And you know what? After last week, I wasn't actually holding up any hope because, you know, Blazing Saddles is as bad as I remember it, if not worse. I'm sorry, but I know some people like it and it's a cult classic, but to me, it should be left buried and never shown again. But this one, I would gladly watch this over and over, and I think the world should see this movie. If people haven't seen this movie, I would recommend it. It's fantastic.
You can see why it flopped, though.
I think the reason why it's flopped is because it was actively sabotaged. I think it didn't get the advertising campaign.
That's crazy. I mean, so much money was thrown at this thing. You think they'd want to recoup it? They just wanted to destroy his career.
So
they saw him as a liability.
I remember them trailering it.
Right.
Not a lot at the cinema itself, but not a great deal of promotion on TV and things like that.
Right. Well, again, I remember we're in England in '88. We were very much a secondary audience, like a very secondary audience.
Yes, you forget over the decades. That's very much changed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Movies.
Do you remember? Yeah, the US used to always get the movie releases first, and then a few months later we get them here. Now we get them all at the same time.
Yeah,
but that was actually crazy. Yeah.
Well, not quite. I mean, they still do seem to most of the time get the films first.
No, not in recent years. In recent years, we've been getting it first because Europe, it makes more money in Europe.
Yeah,
first.
it makes more.
They use that as a testing bed as well, like with the last Marvel films. We get it first before the States. So yeah, I mean,
see, even with Doctor Who, you know, with the cons and everything, they'd get things before we do, and we were like, we paid for that.
I'm just looking up Terry Gilliam's IMDb. So he recovered from this movie by doing The Fisher King, which I think is probably his most successful movie that he did. Not financially, but just in terms of like being able to tell a coherent story as a movie.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
And then after that, he did 12 Monkeys. Which again, solid movie, but again, I think that didn't have that Gilliam-esque, insanity to it.
It's his most commercial film.
That came back with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which he did about 3 years later. But that was after that, everything his career kind of fell apart as he kept trying to make the same movie over and over again. From what I understand.
Well, it's not that. It's basically right. Sometimes filmmakers are so focused on what the film should look like and how great the photography is. They forget about the audience. And I mean, all due respect to all of you, I think this is what this film suffers from. If they forget about the audience, you've got someone like Spielberg who looks at the audience as well as trying to put art in there. But then you've got some directors that are like, Terry Gilliam and Stanley Kubrick and stuff like that. And they think of the art more so than the selling of the product.
I think that does happen in this. Yes, I definitely. I don't think it's there at the start. Like I said at the opening, I think it is very, very, very inclusive. But I do think it does get away from it.
I think it's I mean, anyone who sort of is a fan of Monty Python is very aware of his very absurdist visual art form. From early on in from Do Not Adjust Your Set to Monty Python and the Python films and so on. So people kind of know what they're going to expect from Terry Gilliam from what he's done in the past. And I think this sort of fits in with that. So, yeah, I mean, it does seem maybe a little bit unfair to say that this film suffers from that particular thing, which has come up in quite a few of the reviews that we've done. I understand where you're coming from, but for me, the narrative didn't suffer. The story was quite clear. It was like it's like Inception style film telling. It's like using the story to make the story happen and so.
Yeah,
right.
And I was fine with that. I guess that's my sort of comfort.
The story
it was simplistic, and I think that's what gives it a bit of an advantage, because if he did try to be too clever, this movie wouldn't work.
It's character set pieces as well. It's a bit like a Monty Python episode.
In the first 15 minutes, they kind of lay it out there, right? They lay it out there and they say, right, this is what's going to happen, right? We obviously see at the start where they're taking the piss out of him. He rushes in. No, that's not the way it happened. And then we get the story, and then from then on, it's just one crazy scene after the next. I really did enjoy this movie. I can't believe how much I enjoyed it.
I think there was the scene in the film. Sorry,
there's a wacky piece of trivia that I found out just before I watched this, which completely changed my viewing of it. Apparently, John Pertwee was in the frame for about a year to play Baron Muchhausen.
He would have been good. He would have been
acting him all the way through with John Pertwee playing it, and it really worked. It would have really.
I would so watch that movie, and I think that he would have been amazing in it. But having said that, John Neville in this, I can't imagine anybody actually being better than him. And I hadn't seen him in anything before this, and although I have seen him in stuff afterwards, I can't really remember. I know he was in the X-Files for a while, but really I can't remember a great deal about his other roles. So this has retained that magic for me, where John Neville is Baron Muchhausen. Baron Muchhausen is John Neville. And
Sean Connery was accepted the role, and Terry Gilliam said no. I want an unknown who's a great actor, And
the trivia I read, that Sean Connery accepted the role that was later filled by Robin Williams. So when we get to that section, I'll tell you everything I know about that. So let's move forward as he.
Did anybody notice that Robin Williams never got a credit in the film?
Exactly. Yeah.
He was at the end of the credits of the film.
He wasn't there. No, he never got a credit.
I saw it in the credits.
No, I never saw it. I was looking very carefully. Is it there?
Yeah, it was like the second one.
Right, 100% correct. He's not credited and he wasn't paid either.
I was going to say that does happen, particularly if budget is at breaking point. Actors do that.
Exactly the problem.
But he obviously liked the project enough to actually do it for nothing.
Sorry?
I said he actually must have really enjoyed the project that enough to do it for nothing then.
I think he respected and admired Terry Gilliam.
For him, so he would have done it anyway. They would have said, listen, we can't pay it. And he'd say, it doesn't matter, I'm still getting screen time. And for him being a comedian as well, that would have been, So there is a lot of uncredited people in the movie, so it's not a new thing.
Basically what happened is, when they got to that scene, that the King of the Moon, the King and Queen of the Moon, that's where they ran out of money. That's where they completely ran out of money. That's why all the sets, all the city is all two-dimensional, and like it was supposed to be a real city. Sean Connery was supposed to play the Robin Williams role, but they ran out of money. They couldn't pay him.
Yeah.
And so he was friendly with Robin Williams. He flew in for, I think, a weekend to film that. Everything was ad-libbed. None of it, like basically everything was ad-libbed. There was no script. And they needed that section, that script, that piece of movie to be able to finish the movie. Because otherwise nothing makes sense. So they needed
otherwise we couldn't get that guy that ran fast, right? Because that's who he was looking for. The idol character was he was looking for him. So if they didn't have that part in the movie, it wouldn't make.
Gosh, I've just looked back through the credits. I swear to God, like I had like one of those what do they call it? Those moments with false memory moments.
Oh, so
he's not there at all. That's so weird.
Yeah, 1 second. I'll find out what he's listed at. It's like J Mutty or something.
It's got the King of the Moon, Ray D. Tuto, which is the guy who did the body.
Kevin Bacon's also the same. He has an uncredited scene in Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. He plays the guy that's Martin Short. Oh, not Martin Short. I keep getting them mixed up. Martin Feckham. What's his name?
I don't think his name is Feckham.
It ought to be.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin. Yeah.
So there's Kevin Bacon has an uncredited scene in that.
He does,
He's chasing. Yeah. So it does happen. It's just so they can get exposure. That's.
So I was looking through that, and I was totally focused on looking for it, and it is like I missed what the explanation was as to why he didn't get the credit.
Oh no! Hold on, he's doing it now.
He didn't want it. This was a favor to Terry Gilliam that he needed him to finish the movie. He filmed it as he got off the plane. He had like 2 or 3 days in.
Legend.
It was great. But wait, can I get back to my favorite part of the movie, which was the scene before that? The scene before that is in the Sultan's harem, where all these like strange, very, very fat women.
I knew you were gonna bring that up. And you know what? When that scene came up, right? This is what popped into my head. So this is why Rabbi likes this movie. That was the first thing that popped into my head. And then when there was no more of that, and I was saying, okay, he's not a pervert.
Well, no, there is the 17-year-old naked Uma Thurman in the middle of the movie. That also helps.
Didn't she look gorgeous in that film?
It was a lovely performance as well.
She is a good-looking woman.
Peter Jeffrey played the Sultan.
Oh yeah, from the Android.
He's good at it as well.
So I was absolutely convinced.
Oliver Reed was in it as well.
I was absolutely convinced it was Bill Murray because he looks so much like Bill Murray.
Bill Murray would have been funny in that role, but I did like the way they do the idea that the idea of beauty changes, over time.
Yeah.
That's why
I was going to ask you about that, guys. If you noticed if there was any sort of pattern or reason to it, really.
Right. Well, again, it was silly and it was funny.
I think it's like the never-ending story. You've got because the girl believes in him.
Yeah.
Every time she believes in him, or he gets sort of some form of love or acknowledment, he comes alive and younger again. And
that's what this is. This is the never-ending story on acid.
I think the Sally character is integral to the whole story because she's the one that made him not die because he wanted to die, but also she is the audience. So everything she goes through, we experience through her. So she's very, very important in the story.
Like the companion to the Doctor. Kind of.
Isn't it refreshing? Isn't it refreshing, guys, to see a child in a movie not written as precocious, not played as annoying or as bigger than they actually are, and putting adults in their place. This is played. This is played, and the intention is the way that children and adults' relationships are. That this is in my experience anyway. Speaking as a parent and a step parent and an uncle and all the rest of it, is that children do speak to you on a parallel level. As long as if you're not their parents, they do. They communicate like that, and she treats him like he's her best friend and vice versa.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go that far though. I think she was very much. Well, I guess you're right, but she was very much telling him, "Look, we got to try and save the town," and he kept wandering off, didn't he?
Exactly.
Best
friend. That's the.
Maybe you're right, Dan. Sorry.
That's the nature. But you know what I think the difference is between then and now. This was the late 80s when people in Hollywood had children. They got married and they had children. Now they just molest them instead. So they have a very different understanding of children now. They don't really know how to portray them. Well, gee, that's that end of the conversation.
I was just hoping you weren't going to name anybody. Well, I'm not going to argue. I think the way that children get portrayed in this, it's found it refreshingly simple and pure and relatable.
Sorry, I want to ask you guys a question. At the ending when he saves the town and he's coming in, everybody's cheering, and then you see all the women, right? And Uma Thurman's one of them. Yeah, I didn't see her before he flew off in that.
No,
was she there?
Yeah,
because she was. All right, I missed her then. I must have missed her.
She was one of the three women singing "What Will Become the Baron."
Gotcha.
I mean, I think everybody from that movie, those early scenes were also in the rest of the movie.
Peppered.
So you were talking about Jonathan Pryce, who played the villain.
Yeah, very good in this movie. He was.
Well, it's like the character. He's supposed to be the voice of reason, but what he really is the voice of officiousness. He's there as a foil because he's so pure. He doesn't want to be shown for being infallible. He wants to be absolutely on top of everything, and he doesn't want people being heroes. He's actually going to have someone, a war hero, executed as an example to everyone that we won't tolerate people to make everyone look to be demoralized for making them look pathetic.
Yeah. So again, that was Sting who played the.
That was funny.
He got credit.
So funny.
Yeah, he did.
That was hilarious.
And he was in it because he was Gilliam's neighbor.
Brilliant.
You are joking.
No, other trivia was they shipped everybody to Spain, and then they told Eric Idle he has to shave his head. And he's like, "No, I'm not." So
it was
Gilliam
Italy.
Said, "Sorry,
it was Italy."
I'll shave my head. So then Gilliam said, "Look, I'll shave my head as well." So Eric Idle had his head shaved, and Gilliam didn't. There's
a bit in the film that actually kind of like mirrors the film, the bit where he's dying and Sally says you can't die, and then he says something around roundabouts like, they don't need someone like me, breaking the laws of physics and stuff like that. They're all into logic, and I think that's Terry Gilliam trying to say, that there should be more films like this, with imagination.
Yes.
I think that's what he was trying to say.
I think he's saying there should be more. No, he's saying there should be less a reliance on what's possible and what isn't possible.
Yeah, and I think that was the
triumph of imagination over the complete lack of imagination, where everything is so boring and dull and doesn't work. It's decrepit, it's cynical, it's unimaginative, and it's the end. It's the death of heroes, and he is the epitome of the hero. So he's talking about an age of an industry where magic and wonder and imagination is frowned upon and suppressed, and
Jonathan
the age
Pryce
of heroes is dying.
Represents that though. He represents
he condensed
the opposite. Yeah. So it was quite interesting, that statement. But
how he aligns himself with death and everything.
Well, that's it. It's the only two people in the film that wear black, and it's him, his officers, and death. So he represents war and death.
Death. I just love the realization of death.
Oh, especially at the end with the doctor. That was so creepy.
Right. Yeah. Tell you, I'm the same way as well about seeing doctors. I'm like, as long as you don't know, there's hope. Once you know,
there's another thing that I really liked about this movie is the visual effects. It so reminded me of when I was a kid watching Thunderbirds and and the James Bond movie, especially when they're dancing in the sky, like that scene. You could tell one shot they were dummies, and the next shot, obviously they did a close up of them and stuff. And some of the shots they were on wires. But I love that idea that they built stuff. They made the clouds. They made those little dummies.
Yeah, they look like cotton wool, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing.
It's like they've taken
in those days.
It's like they've taken the sets of the play and integrated it in this sort of way of sort of superimposing reality and fantasy together by using what looks like an artifice into something that's fundamentally physically real. So you've got this very dreamlike, again, we come back to the idea of sort of dreamlike fantasy, and it's so when the clam comes out of the water and Venus comes out of the clam, and you've got the cherubs pulling with the fluttering wings, and it's just so brilliantly done. I mean, you can see that they're not real, but it's done in such a way that it's charming. It's so charming.
Well, that's it. When they were dancing, I love the cherubs flying around them.
Yeah, but you don't see. They're kind of brief. You don't really see them because they were puppets, weren't they? So it's really good editing. So it's still in your mind. You think they're real, but obviously, if you look closely, they're not. Do you know what I mean? So it's really good visual effects. The visual effects are really quite clever.
It's so innovative. I mean, everything throughout this film. I mean, it almost puts Jim Henson to shame.
No, Jim Henson's better.
See Terry Gilliam do a Jim Henson movie. Now you made me want that. That'd be fabulous.
But you know what? Right, when I was a kid and I used to read Cinefex and stuff like, and see special effects people building models of the Nostromo from Alien and stuff like that, really got me excited. I was like, God, I wish I had that model in my house. You know what I mean? When you would look at things like this as well, with the boats floating and the balloon floating, and it's all a visual effect. It takes you back to being a kid. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, it was Thunderbirds, it was James Bond movies that had, visual effects. It was Alien, it was Star Wars, and you wanted those things.
Probably exactly the same people working on it. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was minutes or somewhat. I mean, look at the detail on this clamshell, though. It's it's
amazing.
Crazy. It's just like, and it's just like this baroque beauty in everything. It's absolutely.
It's beautiful.
No, she's beautiful.
She is.
She's gorgeous.
Right. But again, for me, it was because I've seen this a few times. That when they arrive at the moon, it's so clear to me they've run out of money, and the minute they're on blank sets, I'm like, oh, well, it looks like they're in they're out fine. Yeah, so
it works because it's in the middle of the film. If it had been towards the end, it would have really probably harmed it visually.
Yeah, so the beginning and the middle. I mean, all the stuff in the with the Sultan attacking. That's all in Spain, I think, and then they're in Croatia or somewhere, or maybe Italy. I think they're in Italy for the city scenes. But okay, so we've lost the plot completely. As one. The real Baron Muchhausen has three incredible friends. He has Eric Idle, Adolphus, or I can't remember what they're called, who can run incredibly fast. You have I can't remember the names of them. I got the pictures over here. They got this guy who has incredibly good hearing, and I'm not sure. Did I have the third?
He can blow as well.
Screenwriter of it as well.
Yeah, he blows wind, doesn't he, out of his mouth as well.
Right.
Albrecht is the strong man. We have Jack Purvis as Gustavus. We have Eric Idle as Bertolt. And we have
Charles McEwen as Adolphus. So Charles McEwen is also the writer on it.
Wow.
He wrote the screenplay, which apparently Terry Gilliam paid him to write the screenplay, and that's how Terry Gilliam unexpectedly became one of the many financiers of this movie. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't seen the making of documentary, it's really worth it because you go and see inside his house where he just kept all this wonderful stuff. Like he said, yeah, people just put the stuff in a box and you never see it again. So it's got like the asparagus that Robin Williams is eating and things like that. I don't know. So I've got the plot again because there's so much to talk about in this movie. So he has these four incredible friends, and he's made a wager with the Sultan, which is saying it's a wager gets them all excited, and then they know we have to help him. He's got to get a bottle of wine from Venice, I think, within the hour. Otherwise, his head's going to be cut off, and of course they do it. We're using their incredible skills, and the reward is they can take as much as the strongest man can carry from the from.
That was funny. That scene was funny.
Brilliant.
And they take everything. They clean them out, and that's what causes the war. And so then we're back in the wartime section, and the Baron says to three ladies, I can save the city, but I need your help. No, it's not them. Do I have a picture of them anywhere? Yeah, I guess. Here. I can save the city, but I need your help. I need you to take off your underwear. Or
your knickers.
Knickers.
See, I can just hear John Pertwee saying that.
I wonder why.
So and they build this incredible hot air balloon. I just want to point out, look at the design of the
very Gilliam. I mean, that is the epitome of Gilliam right there.
Right,
looks painted.
It does.
So I got the feeling this wasn't a miniature shot, but they made like a giant balloon and they lifted it with a crane.
It's probably like a quarter scale or something like that, I should imagine.
Yeah.
In those days, they used to do a lot of false perspective shots in movies, and it did really serve them well. In the Bond movies, they did it all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the shots in that scene was false perspective shots. So, yeah.
That would make sense. That would totally make sense. So anyway,
they used the set that's in the theater to make this balloon with the knickers and the ship and everything. It's
right. It's just wonderful, and from that they set sail and they end up on the moon. Now the bit where they travel to the moon, when you see the celestial bodies, is just so gorgeous. I love that.
It stands up today. It's the whole thing in the moon is superb, and I just think it's wonderful. The way they just get there and they sort of end up in this sort of ocean and then wash up on the shores of the moon. It's just so bonkers.
But you know what?
It's so gloriously
done. 18th century science fiction. You know, it's not currently science fiction, which is really weird.
I did wonder for a while as well whether they were supposed to be saying, how can I put this, supporting the idea and that old way of looking at the world, the flat Earth way of looking at the world, that the moon we were all on one sort of parallel level, and we could see them, and you could travel there and back just the same way as you could climb a tree that you could just see in your eye line or something. But I don't that's what they were saying, but it did remind me of that.
Yeah.
You know what? They might well have been. But the thing is, I don't really think they're saying much other than we really want to make a really fun story for children that you can sit in and watch. I mean, this was really made for his daughters, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyway, we're on the moon. I think this is the most famous part of the movie where they meet the King of the Moon. The King of the Moon has an interesting trait. His head comes off. He has a detachable head. In fact, so Dan, do you want to explain why he detaches his head?
Well, he wants to be free, doesn't he, from the primal urges, because his body is all about gratification, instant gratification, and living that kind of very kind of base life. You know, I suppose. Do you think he's sort of based on Henry VIII or something? He's living in a very raucous life, whereas the head has got its higher things on his mind, self-improvement and seeking understanding and sort of and wanting
he's
to
also
be at home
bonkers and he thinks
stars.
he's the ruler of the universe.
That's what's happened
I just invented spring.
and those two sides of character of living like that the way the body does, and this kind of higher being that the head is constantly sort of trying to improve itself to be. There's probably a fine line between all that than we realise. But yeah, it's obviously gone completely nuttily mad. And I like the silver hue to the head as well. When he's flying around on his own, it's got this sort of silvery quality to it, the spectral thing.
Right.
It's the man in the moon, the more conventional man in the moon.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, actually,
and then when the head and the body joins up, it's like you can see the blood rushing to his head, and he's just like,
yeah, instantly.
Right, exactly. I love that how he felt. His line again. I think it's all improvised. Was "I have lips again"? Yes.
And you compare that to Oliver Reed's character a little later on, and they kind of riffs on similar things. But yeah, it's gives it a certain symmetry, I think.
I almost didn't recognise Oliver Reed.
Yeah.
Oh, he was great.
He was good in there,
yeah. I didn't think it was him, and then I looked closely. I was like, "Oh shit, it's Oliver Reed."
Oliver Reed for me was the highlight of this film.
About 10 years before he died. 10 years before Gladiator. Which is, that's the point I know where he died, because he died in the middle of making Gladiator. And
yeah, he did. He was good though. He was good in it. He was really good in it. No, I laughed at Robin Williams' antics though, especially when he was trying to tickle the girl in the body in the bed, and he was looking for the head. That made me laugh. Yeah.
When Sally asked why she's so distracted, he said because the king is tickling her feet, and then you cut to him, and he really is tickling her feet.
That's why I call it. That's why I call it a family film rather than a children's film, because
the adults are thinking on one level and the child is thinking on another.
And that's what The Simpsons does, or used to do at its best. That's what Doctor Who used to do at its best.
Yeah,
and it's very much the lightness of touch to the storytelling. I just thought that was a delight.
He just let him play, didn't he? He just let Robin Williams do his thing, and Robin Williams did his thing, you know.
Yeah, and Robin Williams did that numerous times. I think once he'd done it in Aladdin, people sort of got him in to do that more and more and more. And eventually, it was the law of diminishing returns. Eventually, it just got too much, and you just longed for somebody to rein him in and insist that he stick to a script. But here, it feels really, really fresh.
You know, he's a brilliant actor. I mean, look at the performance in this, and then look at the performance in Good Will Hunting. You know, totally poles apart.
1 hour photo and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That I think is probably one of his best performances.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a great movie.
And you know, look how different he is in all three movies. You know, he's a really good actor, and also passionate as well.
This is why he killed himself, because I think because he's got such a depth of feeling. And he's been playing the clown for so long, and you know what they say about clowns and comedians is that they have a very deep depression. And I think once you've experienced that depth of emotional well, that is all of human experience that you can bring out in any role that you want. And because he felt so strongly, felt so deeply, I think that he can express in so many layers we can't even touch upon, you know, us mere mortals in comparison.
This was when he was very, very much over cocaine. He was off cocaine, but all on Morecambe Mindy, he was a real coke fiend. But now he was clean. He just come a year early. Good Morning Vietnam came out, which was like he was big from Morecambe Mindy. But that Good Morning Vietnam was just such a massive breakout hit because it was the first time he did anything like semi dramatic. Well, it was dramatic, but so he's
everything else he'd done before had been a flop, hadn't it, in that respect. Like The World According to Garp and even the Popeye film had been a flop.
Yeah.
So Good Morning Vietnam was the one that really sort of showed you that he could act and that this was a formidable film star.
I even starred in that film with Al Pacino, the remake of that, and he played a serial killer in that. Do you remember that one? That was a loaf that a lot of people don't remember. Was it a remake?
But he couldn't sleep.
That was it. Yeah.
Oh, great movie. That was a really great movie.
And he was good in that.
Do you know who was supposed to be the King of the Moon?
Sean Connery, as you guys said.
No,
who was it?
Marlon Brando.
Oh, crap.
Really?
Yeah, he was up for it. He was really, really interested in the role. But you know how crazy he can be. So I think
they would have having to hold up cue cards for Marlon Brando. So no.
Insomnia. That's the name of that movie.
That was it. Insomnia. That was a great movie.
Really good movie.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. He's not appreciated as much as an actor. Obviously, we remember him as a comedian, but he was a brilliant actor. I mean, you can't fault him acting-wise. He's such a great actor. No. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, guys. Carry on.
He did confuse me because I was always expecting him to be funny and everything, and then when you see him sort of, I think he went through a slew of sort of really soppy films though towards in the 90s, and it was just like, oh God, it was painful. It was, oh, don't do this. Yeah. Go back to being brilliant and funny and amazing. And I think this is something that probably inside he felt. Sorry?
Awakenings. That was the.
That was a good film. Oh, I really like that. I liked
Awakenings. Yeah. Oh, what's the one where he's like a ghosty thing? What was that?
I can't remember. That's a lot of them. Although I did like what was it? What Dreams May Come, which
that's the one. That's the one. I couldn't get into that.
Okay, but this is just a complete digression. I think that movie is the closest that one sees that what happens after you die. What really happens after you die, and I think the big failing of that movie is it's all about this incredible love between Robin Williams and his wife, and whoever played his wife clearly couldn't stand Robin Williams. Like just there's a dripping hatred of you saw something similar in the Wild Wild West with Kevin Kline and Will Smith. You could see how much Kevin Kline hated Will Smith. Like, and Will Smith didn't like not being a preacher. Yeah, so it really. So we digress quite a lot. They find Eric Idle, who's been lost on the moon, and then they end up. Where they go to next? Is that the Oliver Reed scene next?
No, they go into the water, don't they? And they get swallowed by the fish. Am I right?
No, Oliver Reed comes before then.
Oh, that was the Oliver Reed bit. Yeah, the next bit.
Okay, yeah. So they end up.
Well, I have to say we should talk about the reaction when he gets rescued. You know, he can't remember anything. He feels like he's been left there, but he doesn't even know what he's done. And he's
Eric Idle.
Yeah.
I'm going to come with you after being left here all these years. It goes on to say everything. And I went, okay then.
Yeah. All right.
That whole character, I loved Eric Idle in this. And I usually find him a little much. You know what I mean? He tries a bit too hard in those films.
Yeah.
But Eric Idle, you get to be Eric Idle. He's not going to be anything other than Eric Idle.
Which is fine. That is true.
Yeah, which is fine, true. But you know, it's
Nuns on the Run.
I'm sorry.
He was good and he was great in Nuns on the Run.
Nuns on the Run.
Oh man, that's been a long time. I don't think I've seen that since it came out. Robbie Coltrane, right?
Yeah.
It was basically Sister Act with Robbie Coltrane and Eric Idle.
Basically, but before.
How do you pitch that in Hollywood? Yeah. But without Whoopi and in England.
Oh, you wouldn't do it now.
Did he not sing the theme song to One Foot in the Grave?
Yeah.
Idle did, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he wrote it with the same guy who, what's his name? He was in The Ruttles with him, Neil. I can't remember his name, but yeah, he also wrote the theme tune to the Raggy Dolls.
I don't know that either.
Neil Innes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So the next stop is in they end up in the underworld after falling from the moon, and they meet Oliver Reed. Oh, a picture of Oliver Reed. Who is Vulcan?
My favorite thing in the whole film.
That's so funny. I love Vulcan the God. I don't have a picture of him. That's a shame. I'll go for that one. This one instead. So Vulcan the God of War is dealing with a industrial dispute on the shop floor while they're making weapons of destruction. And he takes great pride in showing a intercontinental ballistic nuclear missile. And he explains what they do. So what does it do? It says it kills the enemy. Kills all of them. Kills their wives, kills their daughters, kills their sheep, kills everyone. All dead. And Sally's like, oh, that's horrible. I said, no, it's quite nice because the good thing is you don't have to see anyone. You can sit miles away and just press a button. I love how he plays it with the Yorkshire accent or the Northern.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Love that.
Very funny.
It was like miners, isn't it? With all the Cyclops around.
I think this is another thing where they ran out of money because they didn't really understand it. They kept saying how big Oliver Reed was compared to everyone, but when he pulls them out, he
was shorter. I think it was hilarious.
I think that was deliberate.
They just never did.
That was deliberate.
That was so funny.
Yeah,
it was deliberate. Funny. Okay,
yeah.
That's how to subvert expectations.
Oh, okay. So there we meet Vulcan's wife, which is Uma Thurman, 70-year-old Uma Thurman, looking very, very good. I have to say,
great.
And she like every other woman is quite smitten with the Baron. And they do this lovely thing whenever he's in trouble being carried away, which happens a little bit later. He looks up and smiles. There's always a little twinkle from his teeth.
Nice. That's on the poster as well.
I'm sorry.
That's on the post. If you look at the classic post that was out at the time, the original artwork, there's a hot air balloon that's sort of in the shape of his face with that ting. Yeah. It's perfectly. It's typical sort of Gilliam artwork, but the ting is a lovely touch. Yeah.
I've just seen that there was originally a film. I think it looks like it's from the 50s called El Baron Fantastico. I think it is all based on the same story.
Yeah.
Well, they
put that right at the end credit.
Another movie from like 50 years earlier, or something. Kind of black and white version. For doing like an unauthorized remake.
Because I think the first film was made in 1911, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah,
black
and
and
that's been
white.
filmed several times.
Which is what it was. Yeah, it was all based on the illustrations, wasn't it? He wanted to base all the story on these crazy illustrations from.
The costumes are really good in this film as well. The costumes.
Oh, beautiful! I mean, and it seemed really authentic as well. You know, even the sort of very boordish kind of theatrical setting at the theater, especially with the sort of rowdy audience, and you can just really it's so evocative of the time. I think it's very spot on.
Yeah.
By the way, that in the theater stuff when they're doing the play of Baron Muchhausen, I love all like the steampunky ways they do the special effects.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a bit where he flows out the well and there's like a rope carrying him, and it just works so well. I think
you just it does take you back to that sort of 1700s, you know, or 1800s, and it's so sort of tacky and shoddy backstage, but in the front, it's all very sort of, you know, all these pastel colors, and it's all sort of very baroque, but it's sort of slightly decayed, sort of shabby.
Well, we haven't mentioned Sally's father. What's he called?
Oh, he was great.
The Scots actor, Bill. He was in The Singing Detective. What's his name?
Bill Patterson in Singing Detective, also in Victory for the Daleks.
I knew Doctor Who would be brought up somehow.
I was trying not to. I think I did bring it up.
57 minutes. I haven't mentioned it. It's got to happen sooner or later.
He's so wonderfully theatrical, especially at the end when he's like, "Yeah, he's really into." Because at the first, he's totally, you know, very cynical and terrified by the real Munchausen. He thinks he's a crazy guy, and he's disrespecting his daughter. He's totally ignores her really. But at the end, he sort of redeems himself. I think that was a really sweet little.
He's all smiles.
At the very end, he held up a Playboy. It says, what's his name? William Salton's daughter, which is where. And you know, she was. By the way, she said I was going to say Sally, the girl played her, said she had a terrible time making this movie, but then everybody did. Everybody said it.
I'm not really surprised about that. Yeah.
I actually had to look up to see how many animals were harmed in the making of this film as well. I think it was a bit of a myth that they were. I think what Gilliam said was a lot of things that looked dangerous actually weren't. So it's just the way we shot it. So I mean, I was an extra on War Horse. And I can tell you a few stories about that. And the Hobbit as well apparently had a lot of animal deaths. But I mean, with this one, there doesn't seem to be anything.
Don't tell Barry. Don't make sure
why are you ruining all these things for
I think the Hobbit was pretty ruined anyway.
Next, you'll tell me that Skippy really something really happened. Skippy at that stop. Right? They're still alive.
There were several of them. That's a lot to say.
Heck off. Heck off.
Fine. So basically the whole scene with Oliver Reed, which I love. Noel, I haven't asked you what do you think of this bit?
Yeah, when he throws them all into the whirlpool. Yeah, I love the part where like they're dancing.
Yeah, that's my favourite bit. Is when he's trying to dance, he's just leaping up and down.
And then he starts he won't join in at first, but then you can see he's going mad. But then he starts to liven up a little bit, and then the little girl comes in and fucks it all up. She comes in there and goes, "Oh, by the way, the Baron is kissing your wife."
Right, because she wants to get out and save the town.
Yeah, I thought that.
Then,
he keeps making diamonds with his hands. You know, he pulls the coal out and just goes, sets it on fire with this incredible.
You know, one of those things that really I really noticed is the way Oliver Reed just picked up the girl and chucked her. I mean, today you would never get something done.
You wouldn't get away with that now. You wouldn't.
No, you won't. Yeah.
Well, actually, you would, because in It Chapter 1 and 2, you basically ate a load of kids and ripped their arms off. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
that's another thing I like. I know I talked about it earlier on about the friendship between Sally and the Baron. Is that in this that they all behave towards her as if she's just one of the gang. Yeah, and she's not any more protected. Like keep the girl back from this.
Exactly. She's not treated like a kid. She's treated you're right. She's treated exactly the same as the rest of them.
Well, they're gods. They don't care. He's quite happy to blow up everybody, including. And
that's how kids want to. That is how kids want to be treated. They don't want to be treated like they're made of glass.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, none of my children were ever treated that they were made of glass. You know, so oftentimes, you do like the big Sabbath dinners every week on Friday night. And I'd always enjoy having guests over, and I will say to my kids, "Listen, kids, if you behave well, I'll tell you which one is adopted." You know, keep doing things like that. Well, one day I'll get one of my kids on.
There's that scene in it where he throws Sally off the balloon. That scene where he throws Sally off the balloon, he didn't realize Sally was in the bag, and he threw off the thing. Right. I was just thinking to myself, as I said, I don't think they'd do that to kids. You know, they'll have a scene like that in today's movies.
No, I bet they wouldn't. They wouldn't lawyers.
No, they're too busy chopping their heads off and their arms and everything.
Yeah. So after they go to the underworld, they end up in the belly of a fish. For not long, because that's where he meets his other two companions, and they get spat out the belly of the fish by using a modicum of snuff.
Yeah,
right. And he does that, and they get spat out, and they end up.
First, I think it's an island, don't they?
I'm sorry.
The first they see it's an island because I think it's an island, and it's
right.
moving.
One of the model shots they had in that scene with the boats inside the belly of the whale, those model shots were really great.
Oh, yeah.
And we see Death again when they're playing cards, and he's just trying to forget he's given up, and she's like, "You gotta stop, you gotta snap out of this." And he's like, "What's the point? I just want to die."
Yeah.
And then we see Death again, and she exposes Death, and he gets re-galvanized when the horse comes crashing through the door. I mean, everything with that horse is just amazing. I have to say, I think the horse is one of my favorite characters. Yeah. Especially when they're on the beach and they've been washed up on the beach and the horse is sat there like a dog.
Right, I actually noticed that as well.
That's brilliant. I love that horse. I mean,
and they're all like sitting looking at him while he's trying to work out a plan. And so basically we're in the final reel now where he goes... one of the final reels where he goes and he realizes that his friends are now all too old and decrepit to be able to fight the Sultan. So he says, "I'm just going to give myself over to the Sultan, and to end it this way." And he goes in and he finds that the Sultan is in cahoots with Jonathan Pryce's character. By the way, this role was supposed to be a gift to Jonathan Pryce as a thank you for doing Brazil, which was a nightmare. He said, "I got a fantastic role for you. It's easy. It's 2 weeks. You come in. You go like." It was the worst. However much 2 months of his life.
Here's a gift. Yeah, great. Yeah. Well, I mean, at first, he's so arrogant in that role. He's like, "No, you're surrendering. It's your turn. You won last time."
Right.
Totally lost the plot. Yeah.
And I have to tell you, every time I see Jonathan Pryce, I'm like, I wouldn't mind seeing him as the master again. He was a pretty good master.
He was.
Because of the fatal death.
He played a good Bond villain as well. I thought he was quite good in James Bond as well.
Oh yeah, he was a good Bond villain.
He was good as good as Fagin as well in Oliver in the stage play, which I used to do front of house for. So.
He is one of our best character actors, and I think he chooses his roles quite carefully.
So okay, and an interesting segue into last week's movie was there was an audience with Mel Brooks. I remember seeing one in the 90s. It's Channel 4 thing, and it was just when To Be or Not To Be was coming out. And somebody says, we have some of the great, Hamlets in the audience. And they pick out Jonathan Pryce to do the To Be or Not To Be soliloquy with Mel Brooks. So if anybody can find that on YouTube, it's worth looking for. It's very bonkers.
Brilliant.
So he goes and hands himself over to the Sultan. But of course, aging is just part of science and physical nature, and that's something that this movie completely rejects. And so his incredible companions they rally, and we have an incredible action scene that goes on for a good 15 minutes, like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it is a good action scene.
It's fantastic.
As they battle the Sultan's armies, you have wonderful scenes like the strong guy picking up all the boats and like swinging them around his head to throw them, and Eric Idle running. We were talking about the green screen that wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Do you think that's green screen, or do you think that was back projection?
I think that was green screen because you could see the outline.
Okay.
Well,
so he
blue
tries
screen in those days.
To the Baron and.
He stops the bullet, and then he managed to get a piece of armor from an arm, and then he sort of uses it as a pipe, so it deflects and he goes bounce, 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 and hits the guy who shot the bullet, and then he just falls down with exhaustion, and the Baron just turns around and goes, "No time to lie about, do something."
And you see, that's the type of joke a kid will actually laugh at. It's
but I was transported to being a kid, and I fell about. It was just like, that's taking me back.
It didn't work
what's
with
your
kids.
thoughts on this ending?
I liked the film. I generally liked it. I mean, I wouldn't put it in my top 10, but I thought it was very enjoyable. But as I was saying, kids of that time, they didn't, it wasn't the kind of thing they would go for. And that's one of the, obviously not advertising the film helps as well, for it not to make its money back. But, I remember I was saying to my friends, I saw this film and I thought it was okay. And none of them wanted to see this film, And I think that was one of the main problems of the film.
Yeah, I think you're actually probably right.
Yeah, it's one of the main problems. I like the ending.
With the Addams Family, trying to get people to go see that.
Yeah.
That took off.
The thing is, though, if you look at it very carefully, it is when you look at it, it is kind of a masterpiece of filmmaking, definitely. But young kids, even today, won't even. They probably won't be attracted to this kind of movie.
I disagree. I think every parent should show this to their kids.
Really?
About the same age as the girl in this. I think they should show this film to, because I think that at that age you're not likely to be completely sort of jaded, and I think your imagination, because this film is all about imagination. I think
once you get
kids. Yeah, but today's kids don't have any imagination. They're stupid. They're drowned. And even their parents are idiots as well. So the parents
looking at their phones.
Well, I think any right-thinking adult should show this to their children.
They'll be bored.
Once you get a child in front of this, I agree with problem B. I think once you get a child in front of this for longer than 10 minutes, they would be there pretty much almost to the end, and it would likely hold their attention for the majority of it.
Way.
I think I sincerely do. I think the big problem with this, and the reason, and you are right, Ian, about at the time. I know very few people who went to see this, or it was even on their radar of any age. And I think it was not only not hardly marketed at all, but I think when it was marketed, it still wasn't marketed particularly well. I think there's a way that you could make a film exactly like this. In fact, you could probably put this exact same film out in the cinema now because it was ahead of its time. And if you marketed it in a very particular way, children, families probably would want to go and see it.
I disagree with this. I disagree totally. This film will never work today.
No,
it didn't work then either. So
no, not for kids. It wouldn't work. But
I disagree because you got a whole bunch of kids these days who got into Doctor Who.
Yeah,
and then they went back and watched a lot of old Doctor Who and loved it. So I don't see that's a valid argument.
You may be right, but I can only go on what I think, and I don't think it will work.
I think there's an interesting. I think it's a very sort of it's very shaky as to whether the film does actually, when all said and done, objectively actually work. Because as much as I love it, I don't know if I can conclusively say that it does work. It certainly doesn't do all the things it sets out to do.
I totally agree with you, Dan. Totally. It's really hard to judge this film. I mean, on one, as a filmmaker and as an actor, as probably being as an actor, you can appreciate everything that's in the film. But when you talk about normie watching this, I'm pretty sure that they won't be enthralled by it. I'm pretty sure.
Because any minute now, the Rabbi's going to ask us whether would be.
I think it's everything is really down to marketing. It's like Power Rangers. Power Rangers just proves to me that you can, as long as something is different enough, you can get anybody to watch anything. That was huge. Remember how big? And the reason Power Rangers was huge because it was just so incredibly different from anything anybody was alive.
The reason why Power Rangers was so incredibly successful was because it had kids in it and it spoke to the generation of that time. And also we're talking about high school and stuff like that. But with this film, it's got none of that. That's the reason why I'm saying it won't work today.
She's the main character.
Sally, yes, but Sally's not. She's not connected to anything of today. And kids are too busy.
Yeah, but I can see girls of that age relating to her.
Me too.
There are kids that age who love things like Les Miserables.
Yeah, but they're far and few between, though, aren't they?
Well, I think we underestimate the child's imagination.
There's a quality difference.
That's the thing. Listen, you can brush this up any way you want. Kids nowadays are planks. They won't like this movie. End all. Right? They're not going to like this movie. We all know they're not going to like this movie. This would work for adults, yeah, but kids today are not interested. They're more interested.
I agree with you.
They're more interested in the iPhones and the iPad and the computers. You will never get a child to sit in front of the TV to watch this movie.
I suppose it depends on how you parent. I mean, if you're a parent who has raised a child without, the products of technology, then maybe they stand a chance.
Parents are not parenting their kids nowadays.
Let's put it this way, right? My niece, I put my niece to sit down to watch Star Wars,
right?
And within the first 50 minutes, she was bored, and she left the room. So do you know what I mean? So with something like this, it'll take 5 minutes, and she'd leave. The kids.
No,
and I agree with
that's
Noel.
depressing.
I totally agree with Noel. In front of the TV to watch Star Wars now. They don't want to dumb down Star Wars now, like they've done with Doctor Who. They have to dumb it down because these kids, unfortunately, are stupid.
I agree with Noel.
Their parents are stupid. So movies like this, I'm sorry, this might sound harsh, but that's the reality. Kids are stupid now. These movies, even this movie, would be too clever for them. They need everything explained. They would need to know what's actually happening in this movie for them to actually enjoy it.
Maybe I'm the eternal
wouldn't call
optimist.
Kids stupid, but they have a different way of looking at life. I mean, it's different for them. I wouldn't call kids stupid. They do have their own imagination and stuff like that. Their imagination and what they look for now is not this film.
When I say that you could run this in the cinema now, let's just clarify something. That when I'm not talking about putting it on TV and seeing who doesn't turn off. What I'm saying is that if you put it out at the cinema, that the people who would wish to go and see it, who have bought their tickets, pre-booked their tickets, who know whether they're up to be swept away by this or not, will be swept away if they feel so inclined.
Yeah,
that's different to just whacking it on the telly and see if people leave the room.
I don't know. I mean, like, for instance, when I went to see the latest Blade Runner film, okay, when I was in the cinema, it was half full, right? And you can feel the people getting bored. with that film.
God, I
You
was
can
so bored
feel
at the
it,
cinema.
right? And I think the same thing will happen with this movie, right? As I said, as a filmmaker, as probably being
Generally,
an actor,
perhaps
we would appreciate this kind of movie. But
Yeah.
today's audience, no way.
No,
because I
way.
think we've all accepted that.
Blade Runner didn't do. That's what I mean. Today's audiences, when that new Blade Runner came out, you knew the ones that actually were fans of this franchise because they were the ones that were actually saying that this was a good second movie. And the ones that were only new to the franchise were like, they didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I think the second Blade Runner, people find it bob, but I actually think it was a good movie. It's
not Blade Runner. I'm a huge fan of the original Blade Runner movie. I think it was a massive misstep.
I agree
Do you think we've become... Do you think we've become as well a little bit, because there we are talking about something like Blade Runner.
Right.
But, when you look back to an era like this where even though there was a conversation starting to be had about needless sequels, even in the 80s, Rabbi, this is a standalone film. All of Terry Gilliam's films are standalone films. They are what they are. They're curiosities. You could say that they're all follies, or every single one of his films, with the exception of maybe 12 Monkeys, because but that's also the one that he didn't sort of. He didn't. That was based on a book, wasn't it? It was originally a book, and I think a previous film.
12 Monkeys is great, though.
So there are fewer and fewer films that aren't based on books that have done well, or other films that have done well, or TV shows, or pre-existing properties. And even though the Baron Muchhausen was a folk. Was it a folk hero? Would you call it? Wasn't a fairy tale, was it, Rabbi? Would you call it a folk hero?
Like Robin Hood. I think it's more like a European, like a German Robin Hood.
To me, this is like a Wizard of Oz, sort of adventure.
Wizard of Oz, yeah.
But it's also a mix of. I think last time we were talking about this before, after we reviewed the last film, was that I see this as very in a similar vein to what Voltaire was writing at the time. With Candide, which is a sort of it's like the first sort of jet-setting adventure story, if you like, and it's all set around these periods of history around that time, and it's very political and religious and everything. It's all about this optimism that we live in the best of all possible worlds, and this guy, this hero, keeps experiencing like such an unbelievable tragedy. And it was challenging a very popular idea at the time of optimism as a new philosophy, and it was sort of challenging that and challenging the establishment.
Well, I tell you, if you want optimism, this movie is just relentlessly optimistic.
It's optimism in a bottle.
Which I really like. And funny, picking up something you said, Dan. This doesn't have a sequel, but as we saw from the ending, this is the easiest movie to make a sequel for, because after he saves the city, he gets shot by a very jealous Ministry of Logic, and then you have this wonderful scene where a statue of death comes to life and breaks out the statue and appears as a doctor sucking the Baron's soul out of him, and he dies, and he has a hero's funeral, and then he says, and that was just one of the many times that I died.
Is he a Time Lord? Yeah. That was great.
I do like the ending.
Inception.
Yeah. The ending was really good because it basically was spitting on logic, wasn't it? And as they went through the doors, they suddenly realized the story it was telling was true, because obviously the Sultan had gone and everything. So it was a triumph. It was it was a happy ending, put it that way. And I like the ending. I thought the ending was quite clever.
He disappears on the horse. And, beautiful.
Yeah,
I'll be back.
That's the thing, you see, that goes way over the head of most people today, most audience today.
Yeah, they're probably
I don't know. I think they may not be able to communicate about it. I think they'd get it, but they might not be able to tell you why. But I think they would probably get it because there's something very, the dreamlike state. There's just something about us, about the way we relate to the world around us, about film itself, the language of film, the history of film.
I think it's about how we create heroes. It's about how we create heroes.
Yeah, the history of storytelling.
Yeah, the makeup's really good in this film as well. Like when he was old, the nose, you couldn't see any part of that nose.
Oh, he hated that nose.
It was really well. Makeup was terrific.
It looked great. Again, they should have got John Pertwee. He could have had his real nose.
Save on the budget.
They would save 10 million right there. Fine. Let's go through the panel and wrap up. Get our rating scores from everyone, and a summation of what they think. Let's start with you. Problem being,
I think it's a modern classic. I think it's criminally underrated. It was treated appallingly by the studios and by the various cliques involved that tried to break it and suppress it. It's remarkable to me, and I think it should be viewed today as something that should really be treasured. It's one of his greatest works, in my opinion. I mean, I loved the Time Bandits and all that, but I think this so much more of an epic scale. It's beyond fantasy and the realm. I mean, it really does evoke so much of your childlike imagination. It's a complete joy from start to finish. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film, and that's it. I can't give it a rating. I think that would undermine the integrity of it. I think it's just perfect.
You'll give it.
I'm giving it a glowing review. Highly recommended.
Highly recommended. Dan, what's your thoughts?
I think you're right, Problem being. I think it is underrated. I think it's underseen. And if more people did see it or would find it somehow, it would probably be better thought of. This certainly at the time appealed to me more than things like The Princess Bride, for example. And I think that it's waiting to be rediscovered. I think, and maybe somebody will look at Baron Munchausen again, and they'll go back to these stories and this whole idea and this character and remake it, reimagine it, whatever else. I think there's probably something there too. But as it stands, I think that of Terry Gilliam's films, that this is. You talk about Time Bandits. I love Time Bandits, and I think the reason why people latch onto that and remember it more is that. Probably people loved it. I think partly, John Cleese, Sean Connery, all that sort of thing. But people love dwarves. That's got 5 in. This has only got the 1. It's a lower dwarf count. So not remember.
2 dwarves. You got the executioner.
I only remember the 1.
That being the case.
So I think it's simply the dwarf count. And as much as I love it personally, as much as I'm fond of it, I'm very aware of its failings. It does go off the rails. It does get away from Terry Gilliam somehow. It needed another pass at script stage, tightening up somehow. So as much as I enjoy it, and it did satisfy me, amused me just the way that Noel said, it put a big smile on my face. I'm aware, because there's this niggling feeling underneath all of that says that there is probably a better film just under the surface waiting to have been found with a little bit more care.
I think maybe it could have been a little shorter. I think there was a few points where
it's partly the running time.
It's 2 hours long. It could have been like just under that. Knock off about 15-20 minutes off of that. I think you
1 hour 45, 1 hour 15 minutes would have been the sort.
I'd certainly recommend it.
That's the only criticism I have.
I'd recommend this to anybody who was into fantasy, into this genre, and who hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what kid this would appeal to? Exactly the same type of kid that liked Doctor Who in the 80s. Doctor Who in the 80s
That's me.
was not popular. Exactly. Doctor Who in the 80s was not popular, but you thought it was kind of weird. Well, you had to be kind of a smarter kid to get it, right?
With a thick skin.
Also, but
it's an outsiders movie, and I think Terry Gilliam has always been an outsider.
That's the type of.
It appeals to that.
It would be like a Harry Potter success, but I do think there'll be like.
It's way better than any Harry Potter film. It's better than all the Harry Potter films put together. I'm sorry, but to me, that's how I see it. I'm not a fan of the Harry Potter films.
I'm not a fan of Harry Potter myself now, but that's a bold statement.
I don't care. I'm standing by it.
Mickey, did we do your summation? I can't remember.
No. I did like it. But I think the biggest problem with the film is that you didn't care about anyone. I didn't care about anyone. I still think Terry Gilliam's best film is Fisher King, in my opinion, because all the characters in that film I cared about. And I think that was the main problem with this film, that the characters weren't the character. You didn't care. I didn't care about the Baron at all.
It was very aloof, I suppose.
Yeah, it was amusing, and as a filmmaker, I appreciate everything that I said about the model work and the photography and all that. But at the end of the day, the film failed when it came to audiences, as far as I was concerned, or an audience full stop, because it doesn't. It seems to want to be exclusive. It doesn't seem to want to share its joy with the audience. And I think that's...
Well, I disagree with that. I think because we said right at the start how inclusive we felt it was, because I felt I was swept along and was part of it.
That's the
thing. A quality that it loses.
You know, if you listen to what you're saying, you're very much into this kind of movie. But the normies, we're talking about the normies, they just look at this and I'll just go, huh? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is the bigger audience out there. And I'm not surprised.
That's the audience out there. That's the one you got to get.
I'm not surprised that it failed. I reckon even with a good push, it still would fail, because it's not the kind of movie that you would take your family to see. It isn't. No matter what anyone says. You know?
I totally would.
I wouldn't, because I know kids. Well, even in those days, my friends wouldn't go to see this film. I went to see this film in the cinema, just like Dan, and I thought it was very, very enjoyable. But as I said, it suffers from not caring about any character in the movie and not bringing the audience in to the film. You know, but that's just my opinion. You know.
You see, I would love if they release us at the same time they release like Pirates of the Caribbean 3 or 4. And like, you had Transformers, and they just put this movie out at the same time. I don't know. I think when faced with those other movies, and there'll be a bunch of people who say, "Wow, this is so different, and this is good." This doesn't seem like fatuous and empty.
I bet you they'll come back to this. I bet you they'll come back to this at some point. They'll do a reimagining of it. I can see that happening with all the CGI stuff and everything. It won't be as good though.
I really enjoyed it being not CGI at all.
It won't be the Baron, would it? It'll be some woman.
The Baroness. Yeah,
the Baroness.
Yeah, Baroness.
No, what's your
the Baroness Brie Larson.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Put a smile on my face. It's about half an hour too long, in my opinion. But other than that, yeah, this was better than last week's movie choice anyway. Stellar cast. You can't fault the cast. I don't know. I actually was attached to some of the characters, but I suppose, as Ian has rightly pointed out, to a normie, you probably wouldn't get connected to this. Do you know what? Even though we do say that this movie is ahead of its time, at the same time, I think this is a movie that should stay in its time. I actually I know I said a little bit earlier that if you release this movie now, it'd probably work. But listening to everybody now on the panel, I'm not quite so sure actually if this would actually work now, because you look at there's a lot of imagination in this movie, and Hollywood doesn't have any imagination. And the people that watch their movies, and the people that watch their movies nowadays, let's be honest, don't really have much imagination either.
I think Gary from Nerderotics calls them repurposes, and I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
So speaking about things being
10 out of 10, by the way. You asked for a rating, I'm going to give a rating. So I think it is underrated. As everybody said, the movie was sabotaged. I didn't know that. It's a goddamn shame. I think if it wasn't sabotaged, it would have been a hit back in the day. To be quite honest with you, I don't think it would have struggled. I think this would have actually been a hit back then if I had got the promotion, because let's be honest, it's a big budget movie. And, people would have went to see it because of that. I mean, look at Waterworld, for example. I mean, that movie is shit, but everybody went to see it because it had the biggest budget of a movie at all time at one stage. This was the biggest budget ever for a movie. So everybody went to see Waterworld, and that was crap. So, in saying that, I think if it was promoted properly, this would have been a huge hit. I think it is criminally underrated, and I would recommend this movie to anybody. But in fairness, though, if you're a fan of Doctor Who, Picard, or Discovery, or anything like that, then this isn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a fan of Doctor Who, prior to a couple of years ago, you might like it.
This isn't.
It's problematic.
You said this movie was much better than last week's movie. I put on the screen next week's movie. Well, let's go through the panel. Noel, are you excited or not excited?
Oh, we're watching Indiana Jones. Are we? Are we actually doing Indiana Jones? Oh, well, listen, this is it now. Are we doing the trilogy?
No, we're just doing this one, and then we'll find something else.
No interest. Sorry. If we're not doing the trilogy, no interest. Why pick us with one if you're not going to do the other two?
Maybe we'll have to like that. This is technically the first one.
It is.
And with Harrison Ford in it, man, I'm on board. So yeah, I love Temple of Doom. Myself personally, this is actually my second favorite indie movie. Obviously, the Last Crusade is my number one. Is my favorite. Now I know people will look. I do love the other one, right, with the Nazis and stuff. It's a great movie. But I prefer Sean Connery. Why isn't there to love? Come on, The Last Crusade is great. So I love that one. And then Temple of Doom is second. And then obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark is the third. And I know I'm going to be crucified for that because it's normally Raiders for everybody.
I don't know any wrong answers with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, isn't it not really? It's
well, Crystal Skulls, maybe. That.
Yeah, well, we don't count that. No. That movie.
I'm fine with that as well. Yeah.
That movie does not exist, so don't even mention it.
I'm with you now.
There's only a trilogy. There's only a trilogy of Indiana Jones. Right. Even this new one that they're bringing out, forget about it. There's only a trilogy.
Another one? Oh no.
Well, I don't know if it's being stopped, but yeah, apparently there was going to be. They're going to do another one because they want to rectify the fact that fans weren't happy with the Crystal Skull, so they want to do another one. Harrison Ford be in a wheelchair by the time they
I mean, like, really?
It's pushing the bounds now.
Oh, leave it out. Like, I don't want another Indiana Jones. That was in my childhood, growing up. I don't want to be reminded of my childhood.
Way too late.
New stuff, man.
Yeah, new stuff.
I mean, I can see a remake of it in like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Maybe. Like, maybe
oh, 50. Yeah. Well, I'm about 70 and I don't give a shit and I'm picking yeah. You know?
Maybe, I picked this movie because I'm desperate to find something that you can go, oh God, no.
You should have went with the Goonies. You should have went with the Goonies, though.
No, with this film, this is one of my favorite Indiana Jones films, and I remember at the time when it came out, everybody was saying it was terrible, and the critics were slamming it and stuff like that. But I saw this film 20 times in the cinema.
It's a great movie, man,
and I loved it. I loved it. I loved the everything about this movie. I loved the way it started. I loved the characters.
Yeah,
there was a bit in the middle that kind of floundered a bit, but the rest of it was pure entertainment. And as
I agree. Who doesn't want to be on one of those in one of those little shoe things flying around on the get away. Come on.
Oh, this is going to be fun next week. I can't wait.
It was the first time that they did that joke in the movie where he runs up to the screen screaming and then he stops and then he runs off and then hundreds of thousands of people. That was the first time. And then they copied it in Mad Max 3. They copied it in Mad Max 3. It was the same thing with Mad Max. So they copied that joke from Indiana Jones. And I love this film. This film is one of my favorites.
Well, you've picked a good one this week, Rabbi. Even though I have to say this week's choice for me surprised me. It was very enjoyable, but this movie now is really going to put a smile on my face. And you have to do Flight of the Navigator at some stage.
Yeah, I like that film too.
Yeah, quality.
Disney film.
I'm going to say, I'll let Dan speak first because I think he's next in line. So,
for a change, I've got nothing to say, gentlemen, other than thank you all for your company. Thanks for the invite, Rabbi. As always, I'm loving the video vault.
Yeah,
great fun.
This is great fun. Started off with Blazing Saddles myself personally, and I was like.
We have to do Young Frankenstein at some
point. No, it has now left me. I'm in a happy place.
Heathens.
This was a crowd pleaser. I'm toying around with the idea of seeing if I can get Gary to come on, but we may end up having to wait an hour or two to start.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
He's always smashing it.
Put your
Listen,
finger out.
do you know what you should do? Say the stream starts at 6, but in reality it starts at 7.
I nearly suggested that when it came on my show.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I'm surprised at the choice because it is such a popular and beloved movie, and this is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I was expecting something a little less known, something a bit more challenging. I think I would have been interested to see what we would have all thought in sort of this context, in this format, to discuss something like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or something.
Oh, get away!
No, because I think it's interesting. Because we want to talk about interesting off the beaten track.
At the time when it came out, it was slaughtered. This film was not liked when it came out, and it's a really good choice by the Rabbi, because this film was considered the worst out of the three.
It was.
And in my opinion, it's
the
not.
best.
It's really good, apart from the bit where he jumps out the plane, of course. But apart from that, it's a really good movie.
I'm looking forward to it. I just meant...
Is when it opens that plane door. It says, "Nice try, Lao Che."
Yeah.
I just meant. No, I mean, I'm thrilled that we're doing it. It's just that I was kind of expecting something that I hadn't seen.
Well,
something less known to get like a variety of cinema.
Yeah,
we should do. Like at some point, we're going to do Star Trek 2. But I think you Dan's doing on your channel.
It can be arranged, even because this. Yes, that's a story for probably off mic. But yes, Star Trek. Everybody's invited. Star Trek on my channel.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Original series or
any series, any time, any space.
For me, original series all the way. I'm a purist. I every other bit of Star Trek is a bit of an add-on. I was very bored with the Next Generation.
We'll have to talk about that. We'll have to talk about that at a later date.
I did start to watch it. Yeah, but I think the earlier series is more akin to the original series. But I think it just became just people sitting in rooms talking, and I just god.
Problem being that is a bold statement.
I know. I am boldly going where not many people have gone.
I can see what he means, though. I can see what
bold statements is what you come into the video vault to find out. You come in a video vault here, people say things you wouldn't expect them to say. So I want to invite you all to join me next week. Please check the video notes. Because there's links to everybody's channels. Go and subscribe to everybody's channel. There's lots of good stuff happening next week.
Always.
I want to ask you guys what's going down, but this isn't airing till Friday, so you're probably going to have a whole new schedule by then. Things change quickly when you're YouTubing. But I want to thank all of you for coming. I remind you today again. It's Friday. We're putting out at 5:00. The weekend starts here. Weekend. You should be going to everybody else's YouTube channel for. Dan is excited right there. I hope everybody out there enjoyed watching this movie, enjoyed talking about movies. Join us next week for Indiana Jones, and have yourself a fantastic weekend.